You're also B2B and B2B2C as well. So how do these differ from your direct to consumer? I mean, there's some obvious things here, but also just, how do you approach them in a different way than direct to consumer? And, what adjustments do you need to make to succeed in those areas plus D2C?
Yeah, it definitely gets complicated when you throw those in.
Right.
And in the healthcare industry, it's very necessary. So, I was really lucky to lead growth at 3 different startups in the Series B space of funding before this opportunity. And so I've seen all of these models a number of times over. And for B2B, I think the main difference is really that you need a strategy at every stage in the sales process. And so similar to the direct consumer space where we think about, from top of funnel all the way through the lower funnel techniques, we need to apply the same rigor to every stage in the sales process. And one thing that really has helped my teams in the past stand out and grow is truly understanding the competitive landscape for B2B. So we spent time working up battle cards, which really go head to head with each of your competitors and calling out the things that you are strongest in that make you a differentiator versus them. So having a really narrow lens, and that gives both your content engine something great to work with and your sales team the ability to close those deals. The other things that I've seen be really valuable in B2B is an events program. I think it's really important to be out there meeting your customer. Sometimes that can, again, require medium investment. So we've run programs in the past that required $1 million a year to show up at conferences and make sure you've thought through all of the different touch points from, what collateral they can pick up when they have an engagement with one of your team, how you capture their data digitally, and then continue having the conversation online from that point forwards. And then it's always helpful to have that human touch point. So I really believe in a sales development program where you can have some great marketing campaigns, but it's important to try and get that person on the phone or get hold of them by email or LinkedIn message or SMS to keep that conversation alive and make sure that a human is really understanding their challenges and the things that they're looking for and helping them solve them.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to B2B2C, I would say here, having a really deep partnership with whomever is paying for your services is critical. So, we've seen success with having a sponsor and a champion within the business. So, for example, if we're talking about an employer, which in healthcare, it's fairly typical that you would sell your services as a benefit and be enrolling the employees of that business, then you need somebody who can help you break open access to indirect channels that you don't have direct control over. So that could be their intranet and canteens, TV screens in reception, as well as digital campaigns such as email and SMS.
Yeah, and to dive into that B2B2C a little bit more, particularly interested with that. It seems complex, versus just the amount of letters and numbers in it alone. But we had a show a little bit ago talking about this more in the retail space. So, different industry, but still talking about some of the challenges. Anything particularly challenging about B2B2C, and are there things that you kind of need to have in place to do that well?
Yeah, I do think it's one of the hardest marketing challenges I have ever faced in my career. And that's because it's this really special set of circumstances that requires some traditional approaches, but also, clever use of data and the most innovative tech stack and, all of the best things that we like to do in growth marketing. And so for me, it always comes back to understanding your audience. And I can give you an example here. When I worked for a startup that was offering a benefit for metabolic health services, and this was really dietitian counseling via telehealth. We had engaged a customer who was in logistics, and they had about 25,000 employees across the country, of which 50% were truckers. And you typically find that instances of diabetes, for example, can be really high in blue-collar communities. And so this was a great opportunity for us. It really was one of the best opportunities in our sales pipeline. And when it became a real customer, it was really exciting for the marketing team, but it required us to think completely differently about how we would normally approach this challenge. So we learned through a lot of trial and error that you certainly can't send a direct mail during open enrollment season to somebody's home, because truckers are very rarely at home. They're busy night and day traveling across the country, often with, one piece of tech that they rely heavily on, maybe two. So it might be a phone and an iPad, or a phone and some kind of tablet. And we found that it was really all about mobile optimized email. It definitely, desktop was not relevant here in most cases. And then SMS. And the tricky thing about SMS is you need the right legal approvals to make sure that you're using it in the right way. And so what mattered here is how the data had been captured by the employer in order for us to use it for this purpose. And we had a very small set of data where it had been acquired with the right permissions, and it allowed us to do some really effective campaigns. But we certainly needed to push beyond that in order to achieve our enrollment goals. And then what we learned from that, and what I've continued to apply in my career, is to make sure there's a step in the sales process for securing access to the right data. And what I mean by that is not when the deal is done, when you're in the agreement phase and you're drafting an agreement with your customer, to make sure that there is a step that says, hey, we need to pull in someone from the marketing team and ask them what they need to be successful to enroll this population, and make sure that that is firmly part of the agreement, and that the customer understands why we're asking for that and how we're going to use it. And those are two really critical elements.